Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. Evelyn, you want to do roll call?
Yes. So I would like to introduce our new Admin Associate 3, Josh Martinez.
Oh, go Josh.
And Josh will be the person here for all of our meetings from now on. He will take over from Evelyn, and Evelyn will not be here at night meetings. So Josh will be the point of contact for LAC items. He'll put together the agenda with you and with me, and going forward, that's what will happen. So welcome to Josh,
Welcome. Thanks.
and he'll call roll.
Chin,
Here.
Hagan,
Here.
Moss, Murphy,
Here.
Wilson.
Okay, great. Thanks, Josh. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
So we've got time for oral communication. So members of the public, David, you wanted to talk? Welcome back.
Thank you, Chair Hagan and Commissioners. David Carnahan from the City Clerk's Office. And as the three of you know, I am here because it must be Board and Commission recruitment time. The city is currently recruiting for one position on the Historic Resources Board, 3 on the Human Relations Commission, 3 on the Public Art Commission, and 2 on the Utilities Advisory Commission. The reason the clerk's office goes to board and commission meetings is so that we can not only give you your homework of reaching out to community members and encouraging them to apply if you think they'd be a good fit, but also we have community members at home and here that may be interested themselves or know other community members that would be a good fit. The application deadline for this recruitment is March 20th at 4:30 p.m. and applications are available on the City Clerk's webpage, cityofpaloalto.org/clerk. So again, these are a fantastic way to give back to the community and also to help shape the future of Palo Alto. And we're recruiting again for 1 position on the Historic Resources Board, 3 on the Human Relations Commission, 3 on the Public Art Commission, and 2 on the Utilities Advisory Commission. So all 3 of you will get a flyer, and your homework is to reach out to at least 2 people that you think would be a good fit, and there'll be additional flyers in the back. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, David. Not sure if there's any other comments or questions about David's report or other requests for oral communications? Nope. Okay, great. Okay, so we'll move to the agenda. Any changes, requests, or deletions on the agenda? Okay, so we need a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
And do we have a second?
I second.
Okay. Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, everyone said yes. All right, first order of business is the draft minutes. Do we have 2 sets or just, I know there are 2 in the packet. Do we already? December needs to be approved. And October was approved. Okay. Great. So any questions? Hopefully everybody had a chance to look at it before the meeting or changes? No? Okay, so we need a motion to approve the minutes from December 13th, 2017.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Thank you.
And I second.
Great. Any comments, questions, changes? All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Okay, unanimous, and they're approved. Great, thank you. So we'd like to welcome our new council liaison, Councilmember Karen Holman. Actually, welcome back. I think, wasn't she our liaison a few years ago?
I don't think so.
No?
No.
Okay, I'm getting old. So she can't be here, it looks like, at the moment. So we'll skip that for now, and we can come back to that if she's able to join us tonight. Otherwise, we can do it at the next meeting, I suppose. Okay, great. All right. So the next item, welcome, Bob.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda, and you're just in time for the good stuff, is the discussion on the draft library strategic plan. So we'd like to welcome Jane Light back to discuss it.
I don't think you need to have it that close. You can just turn it on.
Just turn on, okay,
Yeah.
that won't, thank you.
Nope.
So, I'm glad to be here, and the opportunity to hear your comments. It is a kind of a minor, minor revision and a look forward. If you'd like, I can hit just a few things. Monique may have some comments too, I think, is that this time around, we really built on the work that the staff and Monique have been doing over the last 3 years. And so it was interesting for me because I kind of, zip in, zip out, talk to some of the staff about other things I'm doing from time to time. But it was kind of fun to come back and see, from my perspective anyway, some of the differences and the ways that the staff has been really building on having these wonderful new facilities, and the amount of time and energy that was going to creating those facilities now being freed up for really creatively tackling a lot of the service issues that the libraries face today. So I would say that for the goals, we tried to jazz them up a little bit, the wording pretty much, but the goals stayed primarily the same, and it's the strategies, I think, that got refined. And the place I saw the biggest difference was actually goal D, and it was really kind of exciting to see that one change so much because every single strategy is new on that list from the previous years. And in honest retrospect, because of the time that the library, the last plan, they were getting ready to open both Mitchell Park and Rinconada in about a 6-month period. And that was just a preoccupation, as it needed to be, to make sure that was successful. And so and also technology changes so much, it's kind of hard to predict some useful strategies. But what I saw coming back was that the staffing has changed. I think Monique has done some reorganization, and there's now a pretty strong technology group of people working who have worked with the rest of the management staff in particular to really come up with a vision for where they want to take the library technology in the next few years, now that they have the big BiblioCommons project behind them. And so all the strategies you see are actually significantly different. They're not just a rewrite or a rehash. They're different from the ones we had, that the library had just 3 years ago. And that really struck me. The other thing that struck me, I think, was the goal D, where it was really kind of about the staff. It now says to provide a richer library experience because of the expertise and effort of our staff. And that one of the, probably, I'm sure it's not news to you, but one of the concerns of the staff very much is that not only can people not afford to live in this community, but they're kind of disconnected from this community and the actual community that they live in because they have such long commutes. And so there's a concern about, the long-term viability of lifestyles. And so there was a specific one to look at exploring opportunities for improving work-life balance. And I'm sure that's not just the library department, nor is it only Palo Alto, but it was quite different from just 3 years ago in terms of the staff concern about the difficulty of working in the city and the cost of living in the area in general. And the future of that. And so really there was a lot of talk about how can you motivate staff in these difficult circumstances. So those, I thought, were the major changes that the library staff, who had another SWOT exercise for all the staff, and then a group of managers who met once all day long, and then for a second follow-up meeting recently to finish the work that they had started. So, since I took all your thunder.
That was perfect. So, yeah, based on the recommendation of the previous LAC subcommittee, we just built on where we were having successes, and as Jane mentioned, where there were strategies that still fit with the direction the library was going, and we wanted to keep them going. We included those. Ones that were removed were not something that we're going to forget about entirely, but just that we had done enough that we felt like it was either not something we needed to do anymore or a part of our regular, everyday sort of activities. So So that's where we were with this, and we're happy to take comments or questions. Just so that you know, our plan going forward is to incorporate any comments or clarify as needed, and have it be a draft that the staff can comment on and should be in place sometime in March if everything goes according to plan, so.
I had a question about goals A and C, and it's sort of the opposite question. So in goal A, we talk about providing a portal to American culture, but we do a lot with sort of worldwide culture. And then with goal C, we talk about providing a forum to explore issues of local interest. But as we know, the library is a lot of issues beyond just what's happening here locally. And so I was sort of curious about how those two, I guess, qualifiers came into play.
So the American culture, language, and civic life really relates directly to the ESL work and the New Americans program. And I think we felt very strongly that we needed to continue to call that out as something that would further develop. And we weren't sure how exactly. Our ESL classes are run entirely by volunteers, and they're very popular. And the New Americans program, in fact, there's one tonight, but they're, once a month family programs. So, but your comment is a good one, because we do talk about valuing diversity and learning from other cultures, and we have the creative, or, the cultural initiative. So, that is a good point. And the local interest, I think we were looking at the Harwood Initiative and how we have community conversations, and it could be that it is an international issue, but it's generated by the local interest, right? But you're right, that's sort of, that's more our terminology, right? So
Right.
maybe we can think of a way of wordsmithing that. Thank you.
B, on the technology.
Turn it on.
Oh, Mike, yes. On the technology interests, I wonder if we want to also say that we're going to keep aware of changes and improvements in technology and try to integrate them with the library as they become useful and effective. I think we do that anyway, but why not mention it?
Yeah, right. So I think that's the overriding goal. And I think you're right, that's something that we sort of naturally do. But maybe there's a way for us to wordsmith that as well. We'll work on that. Thanks, Bob.
So Monique, I was just curious, is the draft available anywhere? Like, have others seen this besides staff and the LAC?
No, at this point, it's only the LAC, really. We have
Okay.
not distributed it to staff, and we can put it out for the public. So as much as the public pays attention to your agenda, they've seen it.
Right.
So, yeah, we can certainly put that out for comment
Okay,
if needed.
all right.
That's a good suggestion.
Okay, great. Any other questions or thoughts? Yeah. Welcome to Councilmember Holman, our new liaison. Welcome to the Library Advisory Commission. Any thoughts or questions on this at the moment, or?
No, not currently. I just want to thank you all for your service and your ongoing commitment to enhancing, improving, and ensuring our libraries continue to be the vital, wonderful resources that they are to the community and to staff as well. And apologies ahead of time. I came a couple minutes late, and I have to leave a little early. So I'm a bad guest this evening. But so I apologize for that, but full schedule.
Not necessary. We understand you've got a lot of commitments yourself, so thank you. Okay, great. So, any other thoughts or questions? So I guess really this is our kind of, we've seen it before and we're seeing the next version. There might be more opportunity for comment, and then you're looking to finalize it and have it available in March.
Right, and then we incorporate this in terms of our planning, either for programs or as we look forward to budget requests or things that may come up. The goals appear in our budget, part of the budget document as, the things we're working on. And just like the last time, we'll consider it a living document. If something major arises and we need to address that, then we'll go to work on that. And we'll look forward to checking in periodically with you to report back how we're faring on the accomplishments.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, and thank you, Jane, for joining us again. Have a great night. Oh, yeah, one sec.
I do have a question which follows up on the chair's question. How will this be disseminated to the community? Because it sounds like it's going to keep coming back to the LAC, but how will it be disseminated to the community for comment or additional comment?
We will probably have some, what we normally do are community conversations where people are invited in to make comment, and we can do some things online as well. So either through social media, we have different ways that we typically do that, where we either have it available in the library, have boards where teens can write comments, do different things like that. So we'll look at some ways of incorporating that.
Good, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thanks again. Okay, great. So the next item on the agenda is around our collections, and our most frequent attendee, Diane, is back to give us some more detail on the collections.
So I welcome Diane Lai, the division head in charge of information technology and collections. She is making available a revision, slight revisions to the collection development policy, which is something that LAC and the library are to review every 5 years or so. I have to confess, I believe we've looked at it in the past, but I don't believe we made any changes. It may have been before a number of you were on. It was initially developed before I arrived, right before I arrived. So we're looking for input into the collection development policy. I think your copies have the yellow highlights, so you know where there were changes or additions. I have my own copy, which I actually edited today for like grammar and punctuation. So I have a few things. Diane says, I always welcome your keen eye. And then the collection development plan is more of an internal process document for us to know the direction we're working and who's working on which part of the collection, and who's involved where. But, so I'm going to leave it to Diane in case she has anything else she wants to say, or if you have any direct questions.
No, I'm just here to open for questions, comments.
I will say the reason for having a collection development policy is that it does come in handy if someone wants us to reconsider an item that we have in the collection or reconsider the placement of the item. It guides, it provides understanding for everyone in the community to know why items are included and what the criteria are. Additionally, we do occasionally receive donations of items that people insist must be in the library collection because it's the most valuable thing they've ever owned for the past 40 years. And it may be duplicating something we already have. It may be something that is really outdated, and it may be better going to the Friends to sell and to support library programs. So that is the primary purpose, as well as, support for First Amendment, and censor, not censoring, ideas or thoughts or things like that. So, most libraries have this. It's a good idea. The city attorney likes it when we have something that describes why we do what we do. And so, any questions or comments will be.
One of the criteria, I guess, for ordering materials, and especially how much material you order, so it seems to me demand. On occasion, it's not that frequent, but there are occasions when a book is really, really, really popular. And the one that I think was a major issue several years ago, I believe, was the Da Vinci Code. And there was a huge demand for it, and the backlog was enormous, and waiting time for it was months and months. So the library went out and rented 40 or 50 copies. And then after the demand went down, after the people were satisfied, then they just returned them after 3 months, 6 months. But it doesn't happen a lot, but occasionally you'll have that where there's just a big demand for a particular item. And at some point you say, yes, we have to get more of them and lease them and get rid of them when the demand goes down. I don't know how you'd put that in here, but I think it's something that happens even though it's occasional, it's not common.
Right. I think it's more common than you all might think. Think about every Harry Potter book, think about every Stephen King book, think about, all of those. That's more of a process issue, and that, as we discussed at the last meeting when we talked about lease versus purchase and the holds ratio, a lot of that is dictated by available budget, how many of those super bestsellers come out in any particular year. So what we're looking at here is the overarching philosophy around why we buy what we do, and not necessarily the day-to-day process stuff. But you make a good point that, there are opportunities where we, or there are times where we do have to really expand how many items we have available, so the list is not for the rest of your life. So, yeah. Thanks, Bob.
Is it the first time we have this kind of plan?
Yes, the plan itself, yes.
Oh,
This is
okay.
the first time. But the collection development policy has existed for a number of years. I
Okay.
don't know how far back, but
7 or 8 years.
but prior to that, oh, yes, Ned, yeah, so.
So since this is the first time we have the plan for the collection development, so what kind of effect that we would expect to have with this plan?
So a couple of intentions here. One is so the staff can really have a guideline how to purchase and then how to maintain and how to deselect. So then to keep the collection viable for service. And another intention is so just like the strategic plan, it's a living document. So we can put ourselves in a responsive position. Like if an emerging collections, something new comes up, and then we refer back to the plan, and we say, yes, according to our plan, in the next 2 years, we should add this type of format to our collection, or we should not. We should wait. So it gives us a general frame of reference for 2 years, and that's the plan.
So our staff, what kind of things that they would have in mind when they made the requirements, or when they make selections of different collections, what kind of requirements or what kind of things that they have to follow? Does that mean that for this plan, we're going to have like a protocol? So if they want to purchase certain books and there's a protocol means that we must meet the requirements, then we decide to purchase that book. Is that the plan is all about, or it's more than that?
It's more than that. Yes, there, again, just guidelines, yes, protocols, it's, so if it fits, meets these certain criteria, yes, then we buy them. And then no, we don't buy them. Another practical implication is we often receive requests anywhere from 10 a day to sometimes 20 a day, and sometimes 50 a week. So we receive many requests, but then sometimes we don't get one a day. So it just depends. So then staff really need guidance as to how do we want to buy everything to satisfy every request? Then in that case, our fund will become depleted very quickly, but then we want to meet customer demands. Then where is the balance, and then how do you make that decision? Then that's where the collection development plan comes into play, because it's a 2-year plan. Then we say, this 2 years, we list out all the types of collections we're going to have. And then so we say, in these 2 years, we focus our energy on these types of materials. And next 2 years, we focus our energy on the other types of materials. Or we say we allocate certain dollar amount on this versus that. So it's a 2-year plan, and then it gets reviewed 2 years. So it helps guide staff during their work.
And I think it's important to understand that these two documents work together.
Right.
You know, because if you look in the policy, it talks about the breadth and depth of coverage. It talks about the, the kind of principles, the quality of the work, who the author is. Are they really popular here? Are they not? Those kinds of things. So the policy has guidelines as well as, okay, now the plan is, within those criteria, here's what we're going to be working on. It doesn't mean that if the best book ever on, I don't know, name anything, how to repair a car, comes out, and that's not in our plan, that we're not going to buy it. We're, of course, going to acquire it when it comes out. But that our attention and focus will go towards whatever's been outlined in the plan for those two years. One of the things that, as you may remember, Diane has done a couple of reports on the age of the collection. So for the last, 5-6 years, we have been working on updating the resources so that our overall, particularly adult nonfiction collection, will have more current information. And that needs to be maintained. And so this is a way of specifying, okay, we're going to keep working on this now in an ongoing way so we don't end up again with some things that were really aging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So does that mean that when we will have the plan ready, or it's already there, and when you said 2-year plan, does that mean we only revise the plan after 2 years, or we revise the plan as needed, and we will update the plan even though it's a 2-year plan?
Well, the intention is to devote energy and resources on revision every 2 years. And then because that way we have experience with the first year, and then we can really make improvement based on data and how well we serve, and then position ourselves for the next year. And then the third year, it may very well be we say, okay, well, the previous plan it has been working, the data tells us customers are satisfied, and then we say, we leave it intact, we continue the same path. The one element, the reason why the staff and our committee decided it's 2 years is, again, revert back to the earlier discussion on the strategic plan. It's the change of technology. The new formats just emerge so quickly. And then one day you have this format, and the next month another vendor comes along, they have another different format. And then so these emerging collections are really just, we need to figure out because we can't buy everything. And then sometimes customers want them also. And again, we try our best, but then we can't just buy everything. So that's why with a plan, staff has more confidence going forward. So at the end of the 2 years, we revise, and then we just assess where we are and continue. That's the intention. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
I'm not sure whether it belongs in here or not, but one of the things that occurred to me was there are some authors that write a series of books on a topic. And I'll give you an example. Some years ago, there was an author that wrote a series of 7 books on a particular topic my wife was interested in. And the Palo Alto Library only had 3 of them. So she was very frustrated. We ended up going to Mountain View to get the other 4. Now, that's not saying that every time an author gives you a series, you should obviously, get them automatically, but maybe that's something to be considered. And if you think number 3 in the series is a lousy book, you don't buy it. But at least give it a little more consideration when there's a series of materials produced, and there may be demand for the rest of them. That's just something to think about. I don't know how you'd handle that.
Yes, you're right. We try to have a series in all the titles in a series, particularly with children's and teen books, and then teen books. And that's if you can get them read one of them, and you definitely want to continue that success, you buy all of them. Yeah, and then mystery authors is the same. Yeah, and sci-fi, right? So yes, that's a point that I noted here.
So a comment in terms of the highlights. I think it's great to see some of the language from the draft strategic plan in the policy to really update it and align them. I think that's really great. And then just a question, I guess, on the plan. Given the presentations and the time we've all spent talking about collections this year, we know how much work goes into it and how much thought and, a lot of the decisions. Is there anything in the plan that's specifically there to address gaps that you or the staff or management felt there were, and we wanted the plan to, kind of put a stake in the ground to say this is something we're really going to be working towards?
Yes, so page 4, where it says international languages. And that's where we say, at this time, we most actively collected these 3, but then the rest is the ones that are mentioned in that more than 200 individuals in this community, that chart we used, yeah, those are the languages we incorporated there.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then just out of curiosity, just from an overall budget perspective, I mean, the budget we have now and we expect to have over the next 2 years, that would support the plan that you've developed? Or is there, is this an ambitious plan that, is going to stretch our funding? Just in general, I'm just curious.
Monica has already directed us to support, right? To support that proposal.
I'm a good money manager. So the answer is, I think anything, it could expand or contract depending on whatever our available funding would be. Yeah, this does not assign amounts, and that happens in a separate process. So, yes, and then again, of course, with the support of the Friends, we have additional items that we add. And I think as we get into the development impact fees, there's also a possibility of using some of that to support some of the collections. So, but that was a good question, so, yeah. So primarily, we're okay. We believe status quo will support what we're doing.
Great, thanks. Any other questions or comments?
Just have one minor grammar one. Should the plan be 2018? It's listed as 17.
Yes, we saw, I noticed that too today.
I'm here to add value.
Thank you. Thank you.
You'll tell me if this is too specific or not, but I'm a huge fan of Caldecott and Newberry Award winners. And under the children's collection, and I noticed in a couple other places too, it talks about, the work style, clarity, originality, quality of presentation, and, the work's physical qualities, its ability to endure multiple uses over an extended period of time. There are some things like that that refer to things like potentially Caldecott and Newberry, but there's nothing about, how would you put it? Well, I guess enduring is one way of putting it, but enduring educational opportunities and creative education opportunities. So I don't know that the libraries have a collection of Caldecott and Newberry winners over time. I don't know that that exists, but is that too specific to be addressed here, or how would you address that? Or what are your feelings about that? Hopefully positive.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a good point. It's classics and then award winners. We don't have a separate collection, but we do put interfile those items, but with a sticker on it, on those books, to identify them as award winners. But we used to have a separate classic collection, like a classic, like Moby Dick, or just the classic books. Then we interfile them when we moved to the new, back to the new building. It just because we felt it. Kids, when these, we all have kids in mind when we think about this classic literature, and we think when they find some items may not be on their reading list, but it's right there, then it can catch their eye, and then somehow they're exposed to it. So we interfile, but if there's a way we can find out, actually the opposite is true. If we have a separate collection just for award winners and classics, and we can still revert back doing that.
And how would you go about discovering that? It's, exposure is part of it, because if you have a, third grader go in, they may not know about Black Beauty yet or something like that. So, but if you have a section that is kind of segregated, if you will, or separated out, if they look at what those classics or award winners are, they might be, oh, well, these are here for a reason because these are books that have been deemed blah, blah, blah. And it's just, I'm not trying to tell you how to do it, it's just a question and curiosity because children's books are, critical to our future learning and I think especially the Caldecott's because, as an art major, Caldecott's especially because I think they set a tone for what our expectations are in the artistic world, as we get to be older. So it's a particular affinity of mine. So I don't know how you would discover what the better way is to do it. You've had it both ways. I don't know how you would discover what the better way is to do it or if you know already. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It does. I think the fact that we have a children's library and now we have another children's section that's the same size as children's library, we're unlikely to duplicate those things. I've been in libraries where they had them separated and they got far less use than I mean, if you have something that has won a great award interfiled by something else, they're going to look for that. I think the children tend to discover things more often, or especially for Caldecott, those authors frequently have multiple books, and so wouldn't you want them all in the same space where they could discover them? So, a Chris Rushka book would be with his other titles.
Sendak, of course.
Sendak, you're looking, or the year that Charlotte's Web did not win the Newbery. So, and the book that did win is is only in print because it won the award. I mean, it's not necessarily a children's book. So, it would be great. Actually, we could have maybe do a experiment with it. So we can always work on that. Plus, with our new BiblioCommons, we could create cards for award-winning titles, which we have done for 2017 and things like that. So there's a lot there.
Again, it's an inquiry, it's not a direction, certainly.
Sure.
I don't have the authority as one council member to do that anyway, but it is an inquiry because it's a point of interest, so thank you.
Well, we're happy you're interested and knowledgeable. Thank
Well,
you.
you've heard me say before, I have 5 favorite libraries, so.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone, for the discussion, and thanks, Diane, for the info. Okay,
Okay.
so, topic 5.
Topic 5, suggestions for use of library impact fees. At Places today, you have a memo or just some information from Tim Shimizu, who is our the assistant city attorney assigned to library, and he has been on jury duty, so he was not available to come tonight, but he did want to. So it's this one single sheeter talking about why the library collects a development fee and some of the limitations on it. And this topic came up because Bob noticed that there was a city manager report with a discussion about library impact fees. So in your packets, you have the original CMR talking about starting a development fee, and then the annual status of the impact fees. And he suggested that we have a conversation here to think about what might be appropriate ways to look forward to perhaps spend those fees. At this moment, we spent money on the large sign that's on the corner of Newell and Embarcadero. That was considered an appropriate use of these funds as a way to make people aware of the library and bring them in. There are other uses, for example, talking about expanding the international languages collection because of new residents and because of increases in demand on different languages, things like that. That would be an allowable use. Something like replacing the carpet at Children's would not be allowable because it's a renovation or maintenance item. Adding new technologies, remodeling space to accommodate new services, that would be considered appropriate to use these funds. And these funds do need to be used every 5 years. They need to do an audit and determine whether or not this is actually still a necessary fee on development. So there we are. I open it up to any comments or questions. I will say that at one point, and it's still, there's nothing formal, but the Guy Miller Archives, which are managed by PAHA, the Palo Alto Historical Association, and which used to be located in the Rinconada building when it was the main library, we have earmarked about $300,000 to move those archives should the Historical Association renovate the Roth building. Our work to make sure that the archives are maintained appropriately would be for that $300,000, and that's considered obviously an appropriate use of those funds. It would make them more accessible, more people would use them. Although they're very happy in Cumberly right now, I have to say. So I'm happy to answer any questions. You guys can have the discussion however you like.
You listed some of the things that are acceptable and not acceptable. Is that somewhere in here?
It, as we have each item that comes up, we actually just go to the city attorney
And
for
they
an
tell
opinion.
us? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, there are times where I keep coming back, well, what about the carpeting? That
Yeah.
just seems like such an obvious one. No, that doesn't work. So if we built a new children's library and needed carpeting, that would be fine. But it's all about adding space, making space more available, making collections more broadly available. It generally cannot pay for subscriptions, for leases, for anything like that. It cannot pay for staffing, anything consumable, anything like that.
Could we do grants or fund other programs that would then indirectly benefit the library?
Meaning?
So a specific example, I had lunch with Fopal the other day, and we were talking about their advertising and sort of the advertising budget and making sure that they're well-funded so that the word gets out, which then indirectly, of course, or directly benefits the library.
Right.
Because they're able to fund more programs and books and whatnot. And so, if we felt like we needed to boost advertising to draw awareness to those sales, is that something that we could consider?
I don't think so, but, as he, the last line in this memo says, in brainstorming ideas for how the funds could be used, consider focusing on tangible improvements that expand access to greater numbers of patrons. Which you could argue.
It's pretty indirect.
Yeah,
So-
it would be a hard sell.
What about things like more electronic charging stations? Because that could potentially bring, is that a city thing or is that a library specific thing?
You mean charging stations for cars or
cars,
for
yeah.
cars? That is a city thing, that's not a library thing.
Okay.
It's possible, I suppose. I mean, I hadn't thought of that, but. They're less full than they used to be. I've actually seen some open because now there's a time limit, right? So, and you have to pay, so after a certain amount of time.
So Monique, I was just trying to understand then, how much are we talking about? Is it the 537 on
I
page
know-
5? Or is it the million on page 4?
Well, I know that in fiscal year 2017, it says 1 million, and I know that it says 537. Evelyn? It's the 1 million.
Okay. A million approximately? And then is and the amount that it grows in terms of fees, not investment, it really depends on development, obviously.
Yes.
But do you know then, I mean, this year it looked like it was, or 2016, 2017 was 30,000 approximately. Is that typical, or do you know, or, I mean, I guess you'd take 1 million and divide it by 18 years?
Yeah, it honestly just depends on what the development's like, what the
Okay.
pace of development is like. You could look at how many permits are pulled and
Yeah.
calculate from there on the but again, it's based on a square footage. You know, it's not just a flat rate,
Yeah.
so.
And then, just in terms of the structure of the fund, the money's to be spent versus it wouldn't be some sort of endowment that would be,
No.
the interest earned would be annually allocated for something, or?
No.
Okay.
No.
And then, just one last thing on the mechanism and the
Sure.
amounts. Use every 5 years, so does that mean that, by the 5th year of that amount of the fee has to be spent by the 5th year that it was earned?
Or you need to, that's why you go to council, you need to explain why you have not spent it, what you're intending to spend it on. And, you know, and then there will be another nexus study coming up to determine whether or not this is still gonna be something that's.
And when is
needed.
that?
It's determined by, the I think it's planning department who is in charge of these studies, because this is all related to them.
Okay, got it. And so far, really, the signs have been the big expense.
The one sign was, the sign was the only, major thing that
And how much was that?
that was about 40,000, our part of
Okay.
that.
Okay.
So,
Thanks.
and we could do another sign, like, for example, the sign in front of downtown library is wood, it's rotting, they're going to remove it. You know, when people have been wanting to go out and smoke, they've been sitting on the sign, something like that. So we're, it's rotting out from the middle. So replacing that could potentially be a cost that comes from this if we wanted to do something different.
Yeah, the other thing that strikes me as possible, and you'd have to think about it, would be artwork. Put murals on the walls in the libraries and some kind of sculptures in the foyer or in the lawn in front of the library. We have some, but maybe we could add some more. That's a capital cost, so it seems like it would be allowable, but I don't know if it's, first of all, if you really think you need it, and second of all, is it really allowable?
I think it depends on whether it's found to be a capital cost that improves or expands access to the libraries. So if you say that artwork drew more people into the library and that's the purpose for having it, that's possible. I think if you were looking, you know, we had talked at one point about a recording studio or, you know, so renovating a room so that was something that would definitely be allowable. It would take up group study room space, which is so necessary, right? Renting or having a van that came once a month to do recording, that would not be an allowable cost because it's a lease or, you know, it's not a permanent expansion. So, you know, the end result is the same, in terms of the service outcomes, but how you get there is different. So that's something to keep in mind.
In terms of the overall process then, I'm just curious, it's really council's decision at the end of the day to vote or to spend or not spend the money? Is that the idea? Or is it within the director's discretion to allocate the funds?
We would allocate the funds, and then when we went to a contract for whatever it was, if it met the purchasing thresholds, just like every other amount of money, then council would weigh in. So, the threshold for most things is about $85,000, and up until that point, we're making a recommendation, for example, that next year we allocate $15,000 to the international languages, because we know that's coming up. We know you guys have looked at that. We believe that we can bulk it up. Of course, it depends on whether or not there's actually enough published in those languages, and that's always the hard part. But that's a recommendation we're making as part of the budget process. That money would be transferred in to our budget. And so as part of the budget process, the council would say, would, I'm sure in all likelihood, not pick out $15,000 and say, we wonder why you're doing that, that's, so yes.
Except now that you've highlighted it.
Of course, yes, I'm sure. That's okay, I think I can justify that one.
So of the 1 million, you've mentioned 300 that's allocated and 15 that's allocated. What else is sort of allocated and what do we have?
Absolutely nothing
Oh,
at this point.
okay.
We are looking at bids to use perhaps renovate or refurbish already the tech lab at Mitchell Park so that it can accommodate some additional pieces of equipment, like things that are currently only available by appointment because there's no space to put them, or things like the 3D printers, which require separate venting, things like that. There are vents in that room, and we would be able to accommodate them there. So it would require a few changes. We're getting some bids about that, but at this point, that's unknown in terms of cost, and probably wouldn't even be till next fiscal year based on how things usually happen. And it could be that you all want to think about this, and now that we've had some discussion of parameters, and you could make recommendations to us.
I have 2 more questions.
Yeah.
When was Children's Library last renovated?
All the libraries have been renovated in the past 15 years. So the area where the picture books are, the treetop room, that was an addition at that time.
Okay.
So that was, I think, 15 years ago, I want to say.
Not that long.
Not that long?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'll look it up.
So,
Okay.
and College Terrace was renovated around, before or after that? Before, after. Yeah.
And then when's the deadline to decide?
There's no deadline.
Oh, I thought we had to spend it
Well, we've already got a couple of projects now
Okay,
in the
okay,
pipeline, so
okay.
we don't have to spend a full $1 million. Yeah.
So, yeah, I was just looking back at our new strategic plan to see if there were, gaps or new things that are on here. But, yeah, it's good to be aware. I mean, I honestly, I didn't realize it was that much money. So it can serve a lot of little purposes. That would add up, definitely. So that's great. So, in terms of any other questions, or I'm not sure at this point, are we ready to, if you're looking for brainstorming our ideas or us to come together with some priorities,
Or,
I think we'd probably want to think about it, or maybe it's, something we could put on an agenda to, take home, do some research, think about what the process might be and the criteria, and then, some ideas that we'd have or we're hearing, or we'd want to open it up, I don't know. That might guide you, Monique, in terms of how best to allocate or recommend to council how to spend. So, does that make sense? Is there any other info we think we might want? In the meantime, we can always email Monique, but,
I'll confess I didn't get as far through the packet this time as I wanted, so this may be covered, but is this similar to what other cities have, and maybe ideas on how they've used it? Or just kind of things that, yeah, I think I just need more guidance on kind of.
it just depends on how the law around it is spelled out. I've worked now this is the third library where I've either walked in and there was one or created one. In one library, it was specifically for collections. It was called the library book fee, and that was all that they used it for. In another library, it was primarily for collection support, because that's generally the easiest thing to say. You have more people, you need to buy more stuff. And the more stuff you have, the more people you're going to satisfy and who are going to come in to use it. So that's been the primary thing. That and things related to technology have been big ones. I don't know of any that have used it for renovations, because that's generally not allowable, but I suppose it would depend. If it were an expansion, that could also qualify, but I'd have to do a little homework on that too.
Okay, great. Now, you did mention one that you're working on, which is the International Language Collection, and I know we've done a lot of work with Diane and Monique on that. So I think at this point, given the scale of the money, and that's certainly one I think we could support, or at least I do. In terms of moving forward on that or thinking more about that, I'd encourage that definitely. So, and I thank you for having that idea and identifying this fund as a place to move forward with that plan. So that's great. I think in the meantime, yes. Sorry,
I thought the best I could tell you about the children's library renovation was September 29, because that was a date I kept finding, but it was 2007.
2007. Okay, so 11 years, almost. Great.
Okay, great. And any other thoughts or comments on the Councilmember Holman on the, okay. Thanks very much. Okay, so maybe we can all take this away and then we'll consider it for a future agenda item where we could discuss it maybe more in depth and bring our ideas and prepare. Okay, wonderful. Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Monique. That's great news. Okay, so now, Monique's Library Director report.
So you have in your packets information just updating you on the BiblioCommons Go Live, which happened this month. You also had attached the semi-annual library statistics, so the half-year reporting. And then the library items from the Auditor's National Citizen Survey. And then tonight at Places, we have for you the actual hard copies of the performance reports, which are this one, and the citizen survey and the community reports, as we do every year, so that you can enjoy those. We did ask for one question to be added this year about the library, which is how likely are you to recommend the library to your friends? and 91% responded that they would be very likely or someone likely to recommend the library to their friends. So that's good. We went up in terms of, I think, every measure improved slightly, and our over 10-year improvement because of the new facilities, for sure, and our expanded ability to serve the community have improved. And then you have copies of the regular monthly reports. I did want to point out that you have a January monthly report, and with January, you also have a separate report from Information Technology and Collections. Over the years, we've swung now from a quarterly statistical report to monthly reports that are many pages, and which initially, that was not the way the reporting was done to the commission. And there may be a lot of detail that is not relevant or important to you. It may be getting way far into the weeds. But we thought we would show you sort of the whole thing, and maybe at another meeting, or maybe you want to have a subcommittee, or maybe you want to have something else to provide me feedback with what it is that really you all want to know about the library. And, do these lengthy monthly reports, do you find value in them? We're going to collect the data because there's probably some state report thing it feeds into, but it may not be something that you need to see monthly. So I open that up to you for discussion. Anything else that you may have questions on, please let me know. But there's a lot of information there, so.
I'm still curious about the virtual experiences, and then I noticed it was gone from the January report.
Right. So basically, that in the past had been reported by Information Technology and Collections, and the person who was really into that has been gone, and that's why that wasn't being filled in. Diane and I did talk about it, and they're working to get that resurrected. Okay. So. Okay.
And I think it's come up before, so forgive me, but eBranch was down 42%. It's a reclassification, wasn't it, or wasn't that on the semi-annual? Sorry.
Yes, it was a change in how the state library required us to count that. It was not just uses but it was successfully accessing and downloading an item.
And then just in terms of the new format for January, that I think you provided, it looks like it's categorized by some of the strategic plan headers, which I think is.
For the ITC report.
The ITC, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is really, that's great to kind of actionize,
Okay.
is that a word, or? Implement the plan, in a monthly kind of
Okay.
presentation. That's great.
Good.
I noted the programs for all age groups was down significantly both in December and January. And of course, attendance was way down. I wondered why were the programs cut back? Was it funding? Was it availability of people to perform? What was going on?
It's the holidays. The holidays and going back to school. And we are also re-examining our overall programming schedule because there were many programs that were double scheduled, and that doesn't mean there weren't tons of people at both programs, but there was also the flu, and the staff have been out. There's been a number of people who've been gone. So we've been so slim on staff that some branches have been in danger of not opening on time. We have had like 3 people to open Rinconada, which is a large library, to just have 3 people, so we have to shift people around. So yeah, you know, the programming is one of those things that can vary, and going up is not always a good thing. And I mentioned to Gayatri, I said, how come you have 2 story times scheduled at the same time? She said, there's still 100 people at each story time, so it's not as if we're not using it. So they're looking at ways of streamlining that too. So you may see some fluctuations, but I would say mostly Christmas and the holidays. Going back to school.
So I just wanted to commend you and the staff on the platform update, the e-library. In that, you know, that wasn't a small undertaking, and the hard launch, not even a month ago right now. So, and it, you know, from a technical perspective alone, there's so much that could have gone wrong, right? And that it seemed to have gone pretty smoothly. It's not in the Palo Alto Weekly or anything, so that was the first good sign.
Not yet.
Not yet. Sorry, now that I mention it. So I was just curious, though. I know, you know, change is never easy from a user perspective, and despite many of the positive new features and improvements, it's different in some ways, so there's going to be some response. And maybe some things aren't as good as the other platform, that, you know, it's not apples to apples ever. So I just wanted to get your sense of the feedback, you know, some of the concerns that we got or the criticism. It sounds like it was less than some of the people who supported it, or a lot less. But yeah, just some thoughts on that, and then how we're responding, and, you know, are we finding any real tricky things that, or, you know, are things we can fix or are on the roadmap or things like that. So
Right.
thanks.
Thank you. So I had far fewer complaints than I did when we moved to Sierra and when we moved to Encore. So that's a positive. I don't, even at that time, the city's IT department even was receiving complaints. And I have not heard that they've received any, so they haven't referred any back to us. Some of the concerns have had to do with some technical things that people have discovered just in trying to sign up or do something. And we've either contacted BiblioCommons to put it on their roadmap to fix, or there have been a couple of things that were easy fixes that they were able to update right away. But for the most part, I've had to answer maybe 2 phone calls and maybe 5 emails and for the most part, it's been, again, technical things. A few people have said, I really hate this. I wish you had never changed this, and I really liked the old one. I don't want to see what everybody else thinks about it. I don't want to comment. I don't want, and I'm surprised anybody else really was interested in those kind of comments. But, you know, we had been talking about this for a really long time. LAC had brought this up almost from my first day here. And, you know, this was as close as we can get. People who use mobile devices a lot have said, I really like that I can actually use it with my cell phone now, which it was harder before. Yes, change is hard, but there have not been thousands of people. I wouldn't even say there have been 100 complaints. So that's where we're at.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Any other questions or comments from Monique on her report? Okay. So, our next item is other reports. So, again, welcome to Councilmember Holman. If there's a liaison report, this is your first meeting, so I'm not sure what there's to report, but.
There isn't really anything right now. Thank you, though.
Okay. Okay, great. And then commissioners, anything to report or any questions?
Nothing special, but I think that This one, if you can see, this is the one. Okay, we're going to, we're still, right now, we're still having the Chinese New Year, because Chinese New Year have like 15 days from first day to the last day of Chinese New Year. So the total is 15 days. So we're going to have the third annual Palo Alto Chinese New Year Fair. It will be on March 4th in the afternoon from 2 to 5 p.m. And we prepare lots of activities, and we have different demonstrations and presentations and lots of performances. And we hope everyone, including everyone at home, please be there and have a great time. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. Any other comments or announcements or agenda items for next meeting?
Just one comment, as I briefly mentioned, I had lunch with the Friends of the Palo Alto Library, which I would encourage, if you haven't done it, I think you've done it, Doug, and said how great it was, but to just see the operation and how they work and how the books come in, how the books get sold, and then how they ultimately help us out was really interesting. So, and the food is good too. Highly, and there's a bar. If you're into that. But just, yeah, highly recommend it, and thank you, Nigel, for. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Glad you could attend. So as far as agenda items, I think we talked about the impact fee follow-up, so that would be one. Any other thoughts? And we can always email around and send some ideas to Josh or myself. And our next meeting would be?
April 26th,
April 26th,
here.
here.
Yep.
Okay. Other topics, agenda, no.
Okay.
I think we're doing pretty well here. 8:10, 8:15, all right.
Amazing.
Excellent. What a great start to the year.
You can tutor the council.
Okay, wonderful. So before we can leave, though, we need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move to
Oh,
adjourn the meeting.
we can just adjourn? Okay. I so move, and I guess we're going to adjourn.
I'll
then.
second
Thank you,
that.
everybody. Thanks for joining us. Okay.